In this talk, we are going to talk about a fair version of the k-means algorithm and objective. This is a joint work with Samadi and Santosh Vempala. The k-means objective and algorithm is widely used in machine learning and data mining. Given a set of points u and an integer k, the goal in the k-means problem is to find a set of centers of size k that minimizes the sum of the distance squared of the data points to their respective nearest centers. Lloyd heuristic is an algorithm that is proposed for solving this problem. It starts from a random set of k points as centers, and then it repeats a two-step process until convergence. The first step is to assign each data point to the nearest center, and this would partition the data to k disjoint clusters and forms a clustering. The second step is to update the centers and set them to the average or mean of the points of each cluster. This finds a local optimum. The k-means have a lot of applications. For example, image segmentation. Some more human-centric applications of the k-means objective and algorithm are customer segmentation and crime detection. In crime detection, the areas of crime are partitioned in a, for example, city, and then the patrol services are assigned based on this pattern. And that could, for example, determine the average response time to crime in a city. To understand the Lloyd heuristic better, we see an example here. The small white points show the data points, and the red, blue, and green show the initial random centers. So the first step is to assign the data points to each center and form a clustering. And then we update the centers, and then we reassign the points, and then we update the centers, and so on and so forth. Um, the k-means algorithm, as we will see in this example, is not fair to demographic groups. For example, in this example, the blue circles show one of the populations or demographic groups, and the purple circles show the other demographic groups. The k-means algorithm, because it only tries to minimize the total cost for all the points, it prefers the left clustering. And as you can see, the average cost for an individual in the purple population is significantly higher than the average cost for an individual in the blue population. What we desire is the right clustering, which in which the average cost for the different populations are more equal to each other. That was a toy example. We can see that this behavior of Lloyd heuristic and k-means also appears in the real world data sets. We here see two different data sets, and for the adult data set, we see two different partitioning to demographic groups. One is males and females, and the other one is 5 racial groups. We see that, for example, in the first figure, that the cost of an average female is much higher than the cost for an average male. And this is much worse in the case of racial groups. For example, when we have 10 centers or 10 clusters, uh, the average cost for an individual for an Asian Pac Islander individual is about 5 times more than uh, the cost for a white person. And this also happens in the credit data set for lower educated and higher educated people. So to define the fair k-means objective, we need this delta of C and U definition. This is basically defined on a set of centers and a partition of the data points, or a clustering. It basically is the sum of the distances squared of the points to their respective center. Using this, we can define the average cost for different populations. And then the goal of the fair k-means problem is to minimize the maximum of the average cost of populations. So we have the maximum of the average cost of population A and population B, and we are trying to minimize this maximum. As we can see in this toy example that we just saw, the maximum average cost of populations is smaller in the right figure compared to the left figure. And because of that, the average cost of the blue population is closer to the average cost of the purple population. And as we can see, the fair k-means objective prefers the right clustering, and the k-means objective prefers the left clustering. So to solve the fair k-means problem, we propose a heuristic similar to the Lloyd heuristic. It starts by picking k random points, and then it repeats a two-step process. The first step of the process is the same as the Lloyd heuristic. It assigns each data point to the nearest center to form a clustering or a partition of data points. And in the second step, instead of instead of setting centers as the mean or average of each cluster, we solve this problem. We minimize the maximum of average cost according to this partition U. Um, there, we don't know it, at the first look. It is not obvious that the second step can be efficiently implemented. But we show that the second step is actually a convex problem and it can be implemented very efficiently. So the first observation, as is stated in this lemma, is that the center of a cluster should be in the optimum solution on the line segment that connects the mean of the points of population A in cluster UI to the mean of points of population B in cluster UI. The reason is that, for example, suppose the center wasn't on this line segment. Then we could project this point, this center, onto this line segment, and then the cost for both populations would decrease. And because of that, we know that in the optimum solution, the center of each cluster is on this line segment, which I emphasize again, the line segment that connects the mean of population I to the mean of population B for cluster UI. So because of this lemma, we can formulate our problem as a convex problem. So our convex problem is basically to find the distance of the center CI from mu IA. The reason is that is enough is that because we know that the center is on this line segment, if we have the distance of the center from the from mu IA, then the location of this center is uniquely determined. And also, when the distance xi is determined, the distance of mu ib from ci is also determined, which would be equal to the length of the line segment minus xi. So the convex problem is to minimize the maximum of these two terms. The first one is the average cost for population A, and the second term is the average cost for population B. And the only constraints are the constraints on the distance of the center to mu IA. So for each cluster, the distance should be greater than 0 and less than the length of the line segment for that cluster. The reason that the objective is convex is that each term is convex and the maximum of convex functions is convex. We can linearize the objective and then the problem would be just to minimize a single parameter, and we add two constraints, which is that the average cost of each population should be at most theta. And okay, this is a convex problem, and it can be solved in polynomial time using a standard convex programming techniques. But now we show that it can be solved even much faster. And the reason is a couple of facts about subgradients. So the first fact is that if point x star is a minimum of a convex function f, then the vector 0 is a subgradient of f at x star. The second fact is that if f1 to fm are smooth convex functions and capital F is the max of them, uh, and for a point x, Sx show the indices of the functions fj that are equal to capital F, then the subgradient is basically just the convex hull of the union of subgradients of fj at x, where j is in this set Sx. Because of this, for the case of two groups, we can show that for the optimum solution, there should exist a linear combination of the gradients of fa and fb, which is equal to 0. Fa is the function that shows the average cost for population A, and fb is the function for population B. So because this linear combination should exist, we can look at the set Z as stated in this theorem. The set Z is the set of all points where there exists a linear combination of the gradients of Fa and Fb, which is equal to 0. And this set Z is determined by a single parameter gamma, which is in interval of 0 and 1. So we only need to look at this set Z. Because this set Z is determined by a single parameter gamma, it is a one-dimensional curve. And we can use a line search to find the optimum solution on this one-dimensional curve. On the left figure, we see an example of this curve for the case of two clusters, or k equals to 2. The final observation to see why we can do a line search is that is the following: that fa, the function for the average cost of population A, is decreasing in gamma, and fb is increasing in gamma. So the optimum would be a single point in gamma. So here is our line search algorithm. We start by looking at gamma equals to a half. If fb is more than fa, for gamma equals to a half, then we only need to consider the interval of 0 and a half. And then the next point we need to look at is the point gamma equals to 0.25. And if A is more than FB, then we only need to look at the interval half and 1. And the next point we need to look at is 0.75. Therefore, in each iteration, we're cutting the size of the interval that we need to look at by a half. And therefore, this converges very fast. Our code that implements this algorithm is publicly available on GitHub, and you can check it out. So the next thing we look at is that fair k-means is very well behaved, in the sense that, for example, if k-means is approximable, which we know is constant factor approximable, actually, we can find a 6.4 approximation for k-means. Then fair k-means is 2 alpha approximable. This is for the case of two groups, and later we will see that this would be generalized to the case of m groups as well. It is also stable. Fair k-means is stable in the sense that if you have like an optimal solution, and in this optimal solution, the size of the two groups are not equal, and then the group with the smaller cost cannot improve its cost, and in this sense, the fair k-means problem is stable. Also, the Fairlight converges to a local optimum. The main reason is that in each step, the objective value is decreasing. So before going to the case of M more than two groups, we look at some empirical results. PCA, or principal component analysis, is a pre-process that is usually used for k-means to decrease the dimensionality of the problem. We did uh, uh, our experiments with three different processes. One without PCA, so we only normalize the features, one with PCA, and one with fair PCA, which is a fair version of PCA that is introduced a few years ago. And basically, it guarantees to have equal reconstruction error for different groups. As we can see for the fair k-means here, the Lloyd heuristic imposes a significantly higher average cost to females than males. But the fair Lloyd algorithm, which is shown by the yellow line, shows an equal cost for the two groups. This is also reproduced for two other data sets. One is the credit data set, which is the credit information of 30,000 individuals, and the LFW data set, which is the faces of celebrities, the images of faces of celebrities. We can also see that in our experiments, the running time of fair Lloyd is just slightly more than Lloyd, and the convergence rate of them is basically the same. Now we look at the case of M groups. For the case of M groups, we can reformulate the problem again as this minimizing the maximum of the average cost. So it is a simple generalization of the two group case. Uh, and we again do the Lloyd heuristic, which basically start from k initial random centers, then it assigns then it do a two-step process which assigns the centers, the points to the centers, and then minimizes this objective for that clustering, and so on and so forth. Again, the second step of this process is a convex problem. And the reason is that the center of each cluster should be in the convex hull of the mean of groups in each cluster. Before delving into the theoretical aspects of this, we look at some experiments. So in this experiment on the adult data set, we looked at 5 different racial groups. And the x-axis again is the number of centers, and the y-axis is the cost ratio, which is the maximum ratio of the average cost for any of the pair of groups. And as we can see, the Lloyd algorithm doesn't find a fair set of a fair clustering, but with about 20 centers, the fair Lloyd finds a clustering which imposes an equal average cost to all of these 5 different racial groups. Again, the convex program is similar to the case of two groups. We have a linear objective, and we have one constraint for each group, and then we have these constraints that each center should be in the convex hull of the means. And again, we can see that there is a set Z with like a smaller dimension that suffices to look in for the optimum solution. And it is determined by a standard M-1 simplex. The problem is that the problem is not convex in this M-1 simplex, but we can use heuristics to solve this. And the heuristic that we use in our experiments is the multiplicative weights update. And the guarantee comes from this min-max theorem, which gives a lower bound for the optimum. And we verified that in our experiments, the difference between our solution and the optimum is at most 0.01. Again, the fair k-means for more than two groups is very well behaved in the sense that it is M alpha approximable if k-means is alpha approximable, and we again have the stability and convergence results for this. In conclusion, we showed that the k-means objective and algorithm are not fair to different demographic groups. We presented a fair k-means objective and a fair Lloyd algorithm to achieve a more equitable cost for different demographic groups. And we showed that they have nice properties. Open problems is that to find a better approximation for the fair k-means, there is no reason to believe that the approximation factor should depend on m, the number of groups, and then improve the theoretical convergence guarantee for the m minus one simplex in the case of m different groups, and compare our notion of fairness with other notions of fairness to see which one sounds more fair to an average person. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hear your questions in the Q&A session.